the train, and so it was later, as the miller told his tale, that our faces first just go see, turn the wine up, shed our veil. She said there is no reason, and the truth is plain to see, but I wander through my playing cards, would not let her be one of 16 vestal virgins who were leaving for the coast. And although my eyes were open, they might just as well have been closed. And so it was later, as the miller told his tale, that our face at first just go sleep, turn the wine up, shed our veil.
All right. As always, there's a method for my madness. We're going to be talking about Bach today. So what does that song have to do with Bach? Listen to this. Some people don't hear it, but you should thought. What do you think? Could you hear the similarity? All right. I got two videos on here. I'm not going to play them now, but they're there in case you're interested and want to watch them. So, in this video, this dude, he's got two videos about Bach that are both very fascinating, and anyway, I encourage you to watch that. And you know, if you're a rock and pop fan,
you know Harbor Freight.
you might enjoy this brief video about a bunch of rock and pop songs that are inspired by Bach. So, That Whiter Shade of Pale is one of my favorite songs, and many consider that to be one of the finest rock songs ever written. A lot of musicians think that Bach, if he were alive today, would perhaps, maybe he would be a rock star. He would perhaps be a heavy metal musician. Actually, every genre claims him. All right, says, you know, oh, he'd be this musician, he'd be that. You know, certainly one of the all-time, maybe the all-time great in the world of music. let's see, I forgot to put a code up. Well, there's one, but let me just, while I'm talking, let me get a code up. That's good enough for now. All right, folks, for me, when it rains, it pours. I got word last night that my aunt died. This is my mom's older sister. I've told you about my mom and why I rushed up there this past weekend to see my mom. And only a few weeks ago, literally a few weeks ago, did we learn that her older sister, my Aunt Elaine, who's 91, was like riddled with cancer. And I've never heard of anyone going from diagnosis to dying that rapidly. It was a matter of weeks. But anyway, I got news that she passed away. And as I feared, the funeral would be sooner than the end of the semester. So it's next week up in Wisconsin again. So I want to make a trip up there, which means minimally the funeral's on Thursday. So minimally I'm gonna miss Friday, our last day, which saddens me. So I can't be here on did I just say Saturday? Friday. Did I say Saturday out loud? My brain heard me say Saturday. It's on Friday and I won't be here. I won't be here probably Saturday either, but anyway. I'm gonna do my darndest to be here Wednesday. I hate the idea of missing both of those last days. I don't yet know how I'll get home. I just found out about the funeral like literally half an hour ago, and I'll hopefully fly, and hopefully be able to fly after class on Wednesday sometime. Worst case is I hop in the car from here after class and start driving up there. So, yeah, there's that. It's been a rough week for me. This is one of my favorite aunts, Aunt Elaine. 91, I'm happy that the news was so sudden a few weeks ago that she had cancer. I just saw her at another aunt's funeral. It's that time of life for me, I guess. In August, I was up there for my dad's side of the family, an aunt on that side. And I saw this aunt there, and 91 years old. She was in marvelous shape. She told me about the brand new car she bought, took me out in the parking lot, and I could barely keep up with her walking out there, and I'm a walker. So in August, she was buying a brand new car, and I noticed a Fitbit on her wrist, Anyway, she was just, 91 years old and still living at home and taking care of herself and everything. And yesterday she dies. So I'm glad that, she lived a great life and didn't have to suffer with, a body full of cancer and pain that she suddenly was experiencing. So frankly, I'm hoping that my mother will take her older sister's example. And my dad also wrote and said my mom's not doing so well again, so she's not swallowing, or I don't know. I don't know. Enough about that. So there's other personal things that are going on this week that's just made this a very, very hard week for me. So I'm very behind on things. Many of you have written me, and I have not written back, and I'm behind on work and scoring things. And anyway, so bear with me, please. And we also have I've been very negligent in talking about this, which is odd because, I'll explain why in a second, but we have our psychology department second re-annual. We used to do this years ago. 8 years ago, we did it for the last time. My first year, we did it like the last, they had been doing it and it ended that year. Then there was a long pause, then we had COVID. And anyway, last year we rejuvenated the annual end of the year celebration banquet and awards banquet. And I'm on a small subcommittee of 3 other faculty that actually organize it. And despite being one of the co-organizers, I don't think I've even mentioned it out loud to you folks. So that's Thursday, and I won't be there. So anyway, are any of you planning on going? Oh, yay, good, awesome, all right. So I wish, I certainly now, I of course wish I was gonna be there. I planned it. So anyway, have a good time. It might not be too late. It probably might be, but it might not be too late to get a ticket. Look into that if you're interested and ask, and I'll throw in a good word if necessary. So anyway, yeah, enough announcements. Any questions about anything? You have two, maybe 3 more days to ask me questions. I've asked every single day, and I don't know if I've ever gotten one, so I'm going to keep asking. All right. Well, anyway, speaking of Bach, I want to talk about something that he was genius enough to, if not know about, and he certainly seems to have known about it, he at least stumbled upon this phenomenon, but he was musically genius enough that he probably knew about it. A phenomenon that we call sound separation. And we've just been talking about how we get a single complex auditory waveform that's rattling our eardrums and the rest of the mechanisms, and yet somehow our brain can pick apart the individual sounds that are within it. Things like individual voices when there's multiple voices and instruments and so on, and in nature, that sound is a creaking tree, that's wind sounds, that's a bird chirping, that's grass blowing, that's leaves. We can sit there and pinpoint multiple sound sources from a single set of vibrations. Okay, and we learned a little bit about how they, how your brain latches onto certain features of them to do that sort of separation. Well, every once in a while, it's somewhat it can be deceived, and that's what Bach took advantage of. So, in short, if you play an alternating sequence of high and low notes, and it could be just a simple thing, could be just, simple computer, sine wave kind of MIDI tones, those real simple kind of tones, high and low notes that alternate back and forth. And if you play them rapidly and long enough, your brain will start to separate them, and it'll sound like 2 different, melodies if they're hopping around on a scale. Okay, instead of just alternating. They are, they're technically alternating, but you'll hear a high, melody and a low melody. And so Bach took advantage of that in compositions. So we'll see that in just a second. So here's a classic example of a piece that he wrote where it's done. So listen carefully and notice the alternating between, if you can read music, you can kind of see what they're doing there. High notes and low notes and, in different melodic patterns. And your brain will latch on to that as not an alternating sound, but 2 harmonies, if you will, simultaneously playing. Don't know what I did. So if if not immediately, after a few moments, your brain probably latched onto the two, as different sound sources, and almost as if they're two instruments or two, like it could be one person playing the low and the other one playing the high, and so on. I mean, it literally can sound like two sources, right? Here's a poor quality video of a guy doing it on a guitar, demonstrating it for you.
Okay, so what I'm about to demonstrate is an example of auditory stream segregation, which is one melody that consists of high notes and low notes played together. Even though it's one melody, when a listener listens, they begin to hear two separate melodies. The example I'm about to play, while it demonstrates the same phenomenon, it's a little different because it consists of notes that are in the middle. So high, middle notes, and low notes, but you get the same general idea. You begin to hear two separate melodies after a while. And it's also by Bach, as the example in our book was. And it's just a short snippet. Here it is. So that's a short example, and what should happen after a while is high and low begin to be heard as one melody, such as the beginning. You start to hear that after a while as the song progresses. And then you start to hear the middle notes as two separate independent melodies, even though it's all being played at once. That's an example of auditory stream segregation.
All right. Hope that helped too. All right. So, yeah, and experiments have been done with that and demonstrating that subjects and and controlled experiments will perceive the same phenomenon. All right. That ties in with. I'm going to back up and let me go back. I believe I had a slide with several. I ended the other day with this. I believe I didn't really talk about it. And as always, the things in the last few moments are like, gone. Nobody remembers the last minute of class, right? It's like, how long is he going to talk? Is he going to let us go? Okay, so anyway, I ended with this slide and talking about some of the sort of brain heuristics that we do that help us perceive separate sounds in a common waveform, all right? So one of those is location. If we can, if our apparatus, our external apparatus can determine the location, we'll use that, all right? So, you hear, well, that sound is coming from that source over there, and that sound is coming from that source over there. The onset of the sound gives us a clue. Especially when tied in with vision. That's not on the slide here, but of course, if you see something that, if you're looking at that broom handle over there, and if it's just like, I'll use my power, oh, I can't do it. But if it would just suddenly fall over and, crash to the floor, you would use that visual information combined with the sound wave coming in to locate, its source. You maybe with your eyes closed would be able to say, oh, something over there fell on the floor or whatever. You might be able to identify what it was and where it was even without vision, but of course vision helps you with the onset of, it gives you clues about the onset of the time onset. Similarity, all right, my voice has a whole timbre to it, and even though I'm saying different words and sounds, and if I was a type of, I pretty much stay behind this because I'm locked into the screen here, but you have faculty that wander around the room, don't you? Okay? And, as you're zoning off and falling asleep, you can hear where they are, okay? The similarity of their voice gives you an indication of what the sound is, who's making it, their location, all right? So we use similarity of pitch and timbre to help us. A flute, if you know what a flute sounds like, you're going to, all of its pitches have a similarity in both pitch range and, of course, timbre. All right, and then the harmonicity of a series, okay? Let's assume that it came from a single source, okay? If I had background music playing coming out of the speakers, you would hear those harmonics as being as complicated as the music was. You'd combine it into one. Well, that's a song or that's a piece of music. Okay. All right. So anyway, we're using those kinds of cues, which are, again, great examples of top-down processing, all right? Some of them are coming in with the raw stream, but, we're really building a knowledge of what we're hearing based on what our brain tells us we're hearing. These are things your brain has to tell you about the sound for you to simply hear the sound as such, okay? So I hope you can appreciate that as another great example of, the immense amount of top-down signaling that you're doing in addition to the raw information flowing in from your cochlea. All right, so back to this. With this auditory streaming, proximity of time was a large factor that did that. Those sounds, even though they're alternating and like a little distant in proximity, they were similar. And you were using the similarity to override the proximity and make it seem like a separate stream. Okay. Another phenomenon that we take advantage of without ever, often without ever knowing or realizing it, is auditory continuity. All right. When we're just listening to the world, sounds happen that block other sounds. Or in modern times, something like this might happen. Sudden there's just a break in the audio for some reason. Okay, wasn't that clever? All right, and so your brain will sometimes just fill in a gap without a gap. All right, so let me show you some examples of that. We'll skip this. This is here. So. Beatboxers take advantage of this, all right? So
you may well have seen some.
This guy makes me smile, so I hope you'll enjoy this guy. So here's a beatboxer talking about just a little bit about beatboxing, and he's going to demonstrate this concept of continuity. He's one person with one mouth making all of the sounds you're about to hear him make, and he's making different sounds at the same time, which is not really possible. But you'll piece it together both with proximity and time and continuity, all right? So let me shut up and let him demonstrate this all for you.
You may well have seen something called an optical illusion, where you look at something and your eye is tricked, or rather the brain is tricked into seeing something that isn't actually there. Well, you'll be surprised to know that there's the same thing in sound. Now, acoustics is the study of sound, and psychoacoustics is the study of how the brain hears sound. And in the same way that you can trick the brain optically, or with your eyes, you can trick the brain with sound, or with your ears too, so that you make the brain think it is hearing something that it isn't actually hearing. Strange, but true. ooh. There you go. I just thought I'd do an ooh there to make it slightly more mysterious. Is it mysterious? Okay. Anyway, so beatboxers use auditory illusions all the time without even realizing they are doing it. An auditory illusion is where we trick the brain into hearing something that isn't really there. And we do that even with our simple 8-beat and with our 16-beat too. You see, by putting the hi-hat in between the other sounds, between the kicks and the snares, we make it sound as if the hi-hat is continuing all the way through the beat. Now let me show you. I'm going to use a sound or two here that you haven't already learnt, but we'll learn later on. But let me show you what I mean. And I'm going to start with the hi-hat. So if I start with a like that, I'm then going to introduce the snare drum and then the kick drum, and we're going to trick your brain into hearing the hi-hat going all the time. Now, I've told you that it's going to be harder to see the effect, but you'll get the idea. And with a 16-beat, your brain thinks that the hi-hat is carrying on, but it's not really. We're just making one sound at a time.
Isn't that great? Wonderful example. The guy makes me smile. Ooh. All right, here's some more about similar.
This is what the auditory cortex in your brain looks like if it was made out of paper and had a cute little face. Your auditory cortex seems well-meaning, but it can be pretty deceptive. Our hearing plays tricks on us all the time, and it's not your ears that are to blame. And it's not your ears that are to blame. Not your ears that are to blame. Not your ears, 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 not your ears. When you repeat a phrase over and over and over, it begins to sound like a song. Researchers call this the speech-to-song illusion. The repetition of words tricks us into hearing a rhythm and thinking it's musical. And when you think you're hearing a song, your brain works even harder to detect musical patterns and process the pitch. Speaking of pitch, I'm going to play you some two-tone computer-generated patterns, and I want you to tell me if they're ascending or descending.
We've seen this illusion already.
What did you think? To me, it sounds like up, down, down. But you may have heard a completely different pattern. It's kind of like the dress of sound. No one can quite agree if the tones are moving up or down. Really, it's neither. So maybe that was a misleading question. This illusion is called the tritone paradox. The tones are half an octave apart, also called a tritone, and they're computer-generated to be a specific note, say a C and an F, but they're not in a specific octave. What's weirder is that people are internally consistent with the direction they hear certain note patterns moving. If you hear, say, C and F sharp as ascending, you'll continue to think that it's ascending when you hear it in the future, no matter what octave either of those notes are generated in. The tritone paradox was discovered by American psychologist Diana Deutsch in 1986, and it's been confusing people ever since. In one study, she found that more participants from California heard a pattern as ascending, and more from the south of England heard it as descending. Deutsch suggests the speech patterns of our childhood shape the way our brain maps musical notes. If you feel like you're disagreeing with everyone about the pattern of these tones, studies show that you're more likely to hear the same pattern as your mum. Seriously, send this to her. And then listen to these words. What do you hear? Maybe no way?
I wanted to pause it before she revealed a possibility. Did any of you hear anything different? Yeah? Pardon? Romaine? Yeah. Romaine. Okay, that's my sister's married name. And she just texted me. That was crazy coincidence. Romaine. Thank you. Someone else? Yeah, Jeremy. Not your? Not your. Anybody else hear anything? Did anybody hear no way? Let's play it again. Maybe about there.
To these words. What do you hear? Maybe no way? Or bueno? Or depending on how you're feeling, Rogaine? Love me? This phantom word illusion is best experienced in front of two speakers. It sounds like each speaker is producing a different word. But why? So the three bones in your middle ear are the three smallest in your body. Their job is to translate the energy of sound waves to the inner ear, which then transmits electrical impulses through the auditory nerve into the brain. Most of the time, your auditory cortex does its job and we can communicate. Hey. But remember how it can be deceptive? Your brain is constantly trying to find meaning in things. The phantom words are individual syllables coming out of different speakers. But like with a lot of audio illusions, certain brain waves encode the sound in your brain as if it's in one piece. You use those individual sounds to construct lots of different words. Your brain loves to fill in the gaps. Your brain loves to fill in the gaps. Joel, we're almost finished. Your brain loves to fill in the gaps.
Look, it's okay. I just cut in a cough and I cut out a little bit of another word. Your brain loves to fill in the gaps.
The phoneme restoration effect. Did you notice? See you next Thursday. But if you haven't heard enough this week, follow me over to my friends at ACS Reactions for their awesome video.
All right. I honestly can't remember what I'm supposed to say about this. Okay. Do I have an example of this? Listeners find it difficult to identify the song after the. Okay. Nope, I don't. Okay, so let's just pretend I didn't have that slide in there. So we've already many times now, starting with like one of the first days of class, talked about the McGurk effect. That was the ba versus fa. When you see a person's lips, you'll hear whatever the lips appear to be saying, and it could be something else similar, like if the lips are saying da da da, that ba 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 sound will be perceived by you as starting with a D, all right? I gave you an example of two-flash illusion, and I don't think I have a third example of that. I remember showing it to you once, and it just didn't work in here. I think the second time didn't work so great either. So anyway, I'll move on. So here's some more. Some of the things, I believe these last two videos might overlap a little bit, and of course with some other things, but there's new stuff in here.
Life's better when you're under our roof. Save up to 23% by bundling your home and auto with us.
Personally, I'd go with Sparkle. It cleans everyday messes, and it won't clean out your wallet.
All right.
Now I want you to count how many times you see a circle flash on screen.
Oh, here we go.
Let's do that one more time. Did you see it flash twice? Many people do, yet without the sound, it becomes clear that the circle is only flashing once. In this case, the sound has altered your perceived vision. The next one works best with other people around. I'll play 2 tones, and you tell me if they're ascending.
Let me try that again in here, because, yeah, I think I've played this clip for you before, but they don't do it very often. Like, I wish they did it more. So let's try that again. Back up a little bit.
See a circle flash on screen.
Wait.
Now I want you to count how many times you see a circle flash on screen. Let's do that one more time. Did you see it flash twice? Many people do, yet without the sound, it becomes clear that the circle is only flashing once. In this case, the sound has altered your perceived vision. The next one works best with other people around.
See, what doesn't work in here for some reason is that tone is, there's only one tone, right? You only hear one tone. It's the tone that will make you see it. If you hear 2 tones, that single flash will appear as 2 to you, okay? So this doesn't work in here.
I'll play 2 tones, and you tell me if they're ascending or descending. In other words, are the notes played from low to high or high to low? Listen to this.
This is the tritone.
Which was it? How about this one? Write down what you heard for each number and let us know in the comments. Chances are, if you compare with enough people, you'll all have different answers. Surprising? Try some more. And this one. How is it possible that you're hearing something different from others? It's an auditory illusion called the tritone paradox. It's created in such a way that the tones contain both a higher and lower frequency in them, but our brains have a preference of which to listen to. Diana Deutsch, the creator of this illusion, found that your geography and language from infancy all play a role in deciding this preference. Finally, listen to this audio clip of a gradually climbing tune. And yet, if I play the exact same clip back to you, it will sound like it's only continuing to climb higher and higher. I swear this is the exact same clip I just played. You can rewind that section of this video over and over and check for yourself. Try it. Each time you start it over, the tune is seemingly climbing even higher. It's called the shepherd tone illusion, of which there are many variations. In it, multiple sine waves are played on top of one another, raising in pitch, while one quickly drops down an octave as the others continue rising. But our brain doesn't notice this drop, and so the clips sound like they're rising forever. These illusions may help to explain how something like music can have such a profound yet varying effect on our minds, which we discuss in our New ASAP Thought episode here, along with the question of whether or
Right. And that, I realized I've played this whole video for you before. But anyway, that background tone was also an example of this tritone effect, where it sounded to you, I'm sure, like it was just continually rising, okay, when it is not. All right, so, this interaction between vision and hearing is well known to us since, the first days of class, when I started to introduce this idea that vision can override what you're hearing, but every once in a while, hearing can override what you see, okay? The example was if you hear 2 tones on a single flash, you'll override the correct visual stream that's telling you it's just 1 flash, and you'll perceive it as 2. And conversely, if it's, 2 flashes could be overridden by your visual system if the auditory was showing only, if your auditory was only hearing 1 tone, 2 flashes that wasn't in the example, but 2 flashes would make you hear 2 tones, okay? So one can override the other. Vision often will override hearing, but every once in a while, hearing will override vision. Okay, and we also see phenomena like this in the blind, all right? So people who are blind will start to use their, depending on whether they're blind from birth or blind after seeing for some point in the period of life. Your brain will, your brain doesn't want to waste neurons, so other processes will take over the function that normally would be there. So if you go blind, then auditory information might start to use visual neurons, okay? And so echolocation is an example, okay? So, echolocate, people who use canes to see, they're using the echolocation of the tip, okay? The cane is serving a couple of functions. I mean, it's serving as a feeler, of course, but they're also tapping and also training. They start to develop they start to hone in on some sounds around them that you and I have the luxury to just sort of ignore, okay? They're paying attention to things that are echoing off, surfaces of sounds, and particularly the tapping of the cane will echo differently if they're walking by in a hallway and all of a sudden there's an opening, a doorway or something, okay? They'll perceive that echo from the sound differently and be able to use that, all right? And so, there's no visual information coming in, but you'll see the activity in visual cortex when there's no visual input coming in. All right, so
they said earning any degree would keep me in demand, but some degrees are more valuable than others. A cybersecurity degree.
Let me close with this brief TED Talk by, I'll let him speak for himself, okay? There we go.
I was born with bilateral retinoblastoma, retinal cancer. My right eye was removed at 7 months of age. I was 13 months when they removed my left eye. The first thing I did upon awakening from that last surgery was to climb out of my crib and begin wandering around the intensive care nursery, probably looking for the one who did this to me. Evidently, wandering around the nursery was not a problem for me without eyes. The problem was getting caught.
We've got passion, we've got determination. And if we set our sights on something, you better believe it's happening.
That's
we always
rude.
feel like our content
was
all about.
It's impressions about blindness that are far more threatening to blind people than the blindness itself. Think for a moment about your own impressions of blindness. Think about your reactions when I first came onto the stage, or the prospect of your own blindness, or a loved one going blind. The terror is incomprehensible to most of us, because blindness is thought to epitomize ignorance and unawareness, hapless exposure to the ravages of the dark unknown. How poetic. Fortunately for me, my parents were not poetic. They were pragmatic. They understood that ignorance and fear were but matters of the mind, and the mind is adaptable. They believed that I should grow up to enjoy the same freedoms and responsibilities as everyone else. In their own words, I would move out, which I did when I was 18. I will pay taxes. Thanks. And they knew the difference between love and fear. Fear immobilizes us in the face of challenge. They knew that blindness would pose a significant challenge. I was not raised with fear. They put my freedom first before all else, because that is what love does. Now, moving forward, how do I manage today? The world is a much larger nursery. Fortunately, I have my trusty long cane, longer than the canes used by most blind people. I call it my freedom staff. It will keep me, for example, from making a undignified departure from the stage. I do see that cliff edge. They warned us earlier that every imaginable mishap has occurred to speakers up here on the stage. I don't care to set a new precedent. But beyond that, many of you may have heard me clicking as I came onto the stage with my tongue. Those are flashes of sound that go out and reflect from surfaces all around me, just like a bat sonar, and return to me with patterns, with pieces of information, much as light does for you. And my brain, thanks to my parents, has been activated to form images in my visual cortex, which we now call the imaging system, from those patterns of information, much as your brain does. I call this process flash sonar. It is how I have learned to see through my blindness, to navigate my journey through the dark unknowns of my own challenges, which has earned me the moniker, the remarkable Batman. Now, Batman, I will accept. Bats are cool. Batman is cool. But I was not raised to think of myself as in any way remarkable. I have always regarded myself, much like anyone else, who navigates the dark unknowns of their own challenges. Is that so remarkable? I do not use my eyes, I use my brain. Now, someone somewhere must think that's remarkable, or I wouldn't be up here. But let's consider this for a moment. Everyone out there who faces or who has ever faced a challenge, raise your hands. Whoosh. Okay, lots of hands going up. A moment, let me do a head count. This will take a while. Okay, lots of hands in the air. Keep them up. I have an idea. Those of you who use your brains to navigate these challenges, put your hands down. Okay, anyone with your hands still up has challenges of your own. So we all face challenges, and we all face the dark unknown, which is endemic to most challenges, which is what most of us fear. Okay? But we all have brains that allow us, that activate to allow us to navigate the journey through these challenges. Okay? Case in point, so I came up here and they wouldn't tell me where the lectern was. So you can't trust those TED folks. Find it yourself, they said. So, and the feedback from the PA system is no help at all. So now I present to you a challenge. So if you'd all close your eyes for just a moment, okay? And you're going to learn a bit of flash sonar. I'm going to make a sound. I'm going to hold this panel in front of me, but I'm not going to move it. Just listen to the sound for a moment.
I'm Tom Drexler. We have been rated A+ with the Better Business Bureau for over 30 years in a row.
So rude.
Experts at plumbing.
Okay, nothing very interesting. Now, listen to what happens to that same exact sound when I move the panel.
You do not know the power of the dark side.
I couldn't resist. Okay, now keep your eyes closed, because did you hear the difference? Okay, now let's be sure. For your challenge, you tell me, just say now, when you hear the panel start to move, okay? We'll relax into this. Good, excellent. Open your eyes. All right. So, just a few centimeters, you would notice the difference. You've experienced sonar. You'd all make great blind people. Let's have a look at what can happen when this activation process is given some time and attention.
It's like if you guys can see with your eyes, and we can see with our ears.
It's not a matter of enjoying it more or less, it's about enjoying it differently.
Goes across.
Yeah.
And then it's gradually coming back down again.
Yes.
That's amazing. I can like see the car. Holy mother. Yeah, I know.
We're passing a tree on the right. I think you're okay.
I love being blind. If I had the opportunity, honestly, I wouldn't go back to being sighted.
The bigger the goal, the more obstacles you'll face. And on the other side of that goal is victory.
Stop. E allora? È stato bellissimo vederlo qua.
Now, do these people look terrified? Not so much. We have delivered activation training to tens of thousands of blind and sighted people from all backgrounds in nearly 40 countries. When blind people learn to see, sighted people seem inspired to want to learn to see their way better, more clearly, with less fear, right? Because this exemplifies the immense capacity within us all to navigate any type of challenge, through any form of darkness, to discoveries unimagined when we are activated. I wish you all a most activating journey. Thank you very much.
Things you used to run.
And that's it for me. So, all right. Oh, my clock that I fixed, I just noticed, is off again. All right. Anyway, let's see. One thing I forgot to tell you captive audience. So thank you for submitting your My Favorite Thing videos. Your TAs are going through them if they haven't already. And leave them up. Okay, even after they give you an initial score, you must leave them up. Don't take your videos down. If you took it down already, put it back up. Okay, so don't take your link down or deactivate in any way. Do so until, at least until you get your grades officially, well after. Anyway, I always. It always takes me until the moment grades are due. They're due like Wednesday after finals week. I will need that time to go through nearly 500 of these. So don't take them down, please. Okay? If you didn't get yours in yet, do so. Do so. And enjoy the weekend, all right? I'll see you Monday and hopefully Wednesday. So anyway, thanks for being here today. Have a great day.